Hello, my name is Mel Prusak, and my presentation today is a tour of my Bob Dylan Museum that is known as the Dylan Shrine. We will start the presentation with an interview that I did on a local cable station in New Jersey that was called Exercise the Right Choice. The show was about people's hobbies, and mine, of course, was being curator of the Dylan Shrine. So without further ado, here is that interview.
Choices! You gotta make choices. Choices.
Welcome to another edition of Exercise the Right Choice. On this show, we explore different things to do with your spare time. Well, this is a very special show about hobbies. Fan is short for fanatic, and we're going to meet the biggest Dylan fan. This is Mel Prusak. Hi, Mel.
Hi, how you doing?
Mel, you have taken a hobby to its highest level. Why Dylan?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I have reached the highest level. Why Dylan? Well, I always was a collector. I was basically rock and roll. I loved rock and roll from its inception. And I was one of the few people in the early days that really felt this was music that could change the world, when most people felt it was not going to last. I'm the same age as Dylan, and I could relate very well to him growing up listening to the same music. He became very famous as a folk singer in the beginning. I feel I got into him very late because I didn't really get to know him till 1965. And he had started here in like 62 as a folk singer. And I was into folk music, but the only way I knew him was through like the music of other people that was interpreting his work, like Peter, Paul and Mary had Blowing in the Wind. Mm-hmm. So I heard of Bob Dylan, but I never actually heard him himself. One day in 65, I was just twirling the TV stations, and he was in the middle of a song, It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding, an incredible song, and I was mesmerized by it. And I didn't know who he was, but I was mesmerized. The next day I just ran out and got the album. And then it wasn't long before I picked up all the past albums too. Because here was a singer that was saying something that nobody else was doing, and that no one else has ever done.
That album has turned itself all these years into a shrine, and you actually have a shrine that people come to visit, and it's a shrine to Dylan. What's in this shrine?
Well, my shrine is a little bit different than most other ones. Now, there are Dylan shrines, and there's also Frank Sinatra shrines and Elvis shrines all over the country. And basically, most Dylan museums, I could say, have the records, they have the music, they have the books, things that anybody could just collect, which I collected too, but my shrine is unique in that I have created things that are one-of-a-kind things.
Now, you call it Zim art. Why Zim art?
Well, before there was a Bob Dylan, there was a Robert Zimmerman. So Zim art is the name I chose for these creations that represent Dylan's work, but in form. Now, there's a concept behind Zim art. It's not just a piece of art that it describes a Dylan song or a line from a song, even though it does that, but it's more than that. See, Dylan was unique in a respect that when he created his music, he went to old, discarded music. There was an old gospel song called No More Auction Block. He took that song, and from it he created Blowing in the Wind. He took the riff from La Bamba, and he created Like a Rolling Stone. So my concept was that you take old, discarded things that have been thrown away and create something new that has a message and says something. So as what Dylan did with his music, that's what my Zim art does. I tell people, you want to create Zim art, go to your attic, go to a flea market, listen to some Dylan songs, hear something that captures your imagination, and create it.
Okay, Mel, the most famous piece of Zim art is the hat that got you in that film at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And here it is. Want to explain it to me?
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't the hat.
Okay.
It was the Zim art, Mr. Tambourine.
Oh, the tambourine. Okay.
See, now, Mr. Tambourine Man, when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame people saw that particular thing, they loved it. And that's what got me into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that particular piece of art. So when I went to the grand opening to see my film, I had to go to the grand opening, I wanted to be seen. I made up this hat to go to Cleveland
I
and walk
see.
around with it.
Okay.
And
You wore an exhibit.
yeah, I wore an exhibit. Because that way people were looking at the exhibit and they turned around and said, oh my God, this is the person that did it.
Cleveland will never be the same, Mel.
No.
I don't
no.
think so.
And in the movie, the line I say about this particular piece is that, yes, this is Mr. Tambourine Man with one arm waving free. See, the one arm was waving free, and that's a line in the song. And a lot
Now-
of people didn't catch that, and then when I said it, oh my God, yeah, one arm is waving free.
Well, you're just full of Zim quotes, too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite pieces in the shrine is your equation. Want to tell me about
Yeah,
that?
well, I created this Dylan equation. They're basically dolls of characters. One is Elvis. and
Was
one-
he some sort of inspiration to Dylan?
Yeah, when Dylan saw Elvis came around and Dylan saw Elvis, Dylan said, this is what I got to do for a living. This is it. And that's when he decided that he's going to go into music. He loved rock and roll and he wanted to follow. When he graduated from high school in 1959, in his yearbook it said, my ambition is to follow Little Richard. A lot of people don't know that because he became so famous. He was the king of folk music. Him, Joan Baez, the Queen and King. The reason he went into folk music was because in the beginning, rock and roll being his first love, he couldn't afford to hire people. He couldn't have a band. He couldn't afford to hire people.
So he was a solo act.
Then when he saw Woody Guthrie, he said, wow, with Woody Guthrie, all I need is a harmonica and a guitar.
So the
and that's what-
equation starts with Elvis.
Starts with Elvis plus James Dean.
Now, why
When he
James
went to
Dean?
see Rebel Without a Cause, it changed his life. He became like James Dean, and he got his attitude. His attitude was the attitude of James Dean, which was the rebellion against what was going on in those days, and which has never changed. He has never sold out. He has never done anything to change his stance from the beginning. Always fighting for the freedom of people, and not to follow idols, not to. He's against a person like me. He doesn't understand why I even do this. He says, "You're not." He's against it. Even though he felt that way about Woody Guthrie, he doesn't understand other people picking an idol and saying, "Yes, I want to follow this person too."
So Elvis plus James Dean equals Dylan.
Dylan. So my equation is pictures of them equaling Dylan.
You are incredibly clever. And in seeing some of the art, tell me about a couple of others. There's the brass bed for Lay Lady Lay.
Yeah, well, it's very simple. There you see the brass bed with Dylan's guitar on it, and it represents Lay Lady Lay.
Right, right. Now, where does the inspiration come? You work here in the shrine.
I may just be here just listening to some music, and I would hear a line from a Dylan song, and I would say that, and I see a picture of it. And then I remember something laying around. Oh, I have that. Like I had a planter downstairs with a broken pump on it. And I brought it up and said, oh, the pump don't work because the vandals took the handle. So I have the pump without the handle. And Lay Lady Lay, and of course Mr. Tambourine. And it just comes to me by listening to Dylan's music.
Now, how about the clocks? The clocks are all about time, right?
Well,
Share
when
one
I
of the
first-
clocks with
When
me.
I first started this whole the whole Zim art, I created what I called Dill Time. Time has been a very, very important factor in Dylan's work throughout his career. Time has always had a very important factor. So I started creating clocks that represented time and Dylan. And I have over 100 of them now. And I call it the Dill Time display. And it's all these clocks that represent Dylan songs relating to time. And that's how I first got started creating my own things. That's what made it different, that I created these one. I was going to give them out. I said, someone comes to the shrine, I'll give them a souvenir. But then I couldn't part with it because I loved it. I said, oh, this is a one piece. It's my art. I can't give it away. So and it kept going up and up and up. And then I started with keychains. I made a whole set of keychains that represent. One of the keychains says, I saw Elvis at the Dylan Shrine. Well, you saw Elvis in the equation.
Yes, I did.
And this is a souvenir basically of the Dylan Shrine with Elvis on it and Dylan on it. And it's a souvenir of the Dylan Shrine.
Tell me, if you met Dylan, what would you say?
Yeah, well, if I met him, or you mean when I meet him?
When you meet Dylan.
When I meet him, I'll probably be the way he was when he met one of his idols. He once bumped into Johnny Ray in an elevator, and he was tongue-tied. He didn't know what to say. I'd probably be the same way. I probably wouldn't know what to say to him.
Well, Mel, I'm convinced you're going to meet Dylan.
It would be nice.
Thanks for sharing your shrine.
It's been my pleasure.
Now, a few years later, the Dylan Shrine expanded we had more room and we had more displays. And now I'd like to give you a closer look at some of the items and things that were in my Dylan Shrine. The Dylan Shrine opened up on Bob's birthday, May 24th, 1992. And it closed sometime in 2017 when we moved to Florida. Here are newspaper articles about me getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and winning Dylan Imitators contests. These are examples of Zim art. There you saw the Zim art. Sometimes even the President of the United States has to stand naked. Now, there is the Dylan talking head that I created. This is the Dylan equation. James Dean plus Elvis equal Dylan. Here is the Dylan jukebox, all 45s of every decade that Dylan made singles. Here's the Grateful Dead section. There's Jerry Garcia playing guitar that I also created. These are guitar picks of artists that performed or related to Bob Dylan. Some of the Bob Dylan guitar picks are also there. There is a raw vinyl of Bob Dylan's greatest hits, which before it was pressed to be an album. Very rare item. They have the famous Bob Dylan neon sign that was given to me by my wife and children. Here's a Dylan piece called Tangled Up in Blue, which was a weaved rug that my wife Zelly made for me. These are Bob Dylan picture discs. Here's a Bob Dylan set list. Here's the Wilbury wall, all items relating to the traveling Wilburys, including many posters of the traveling Wilburys. Here's the traveling Wilbury guitar. There we have the Dylan Library, many books on Bob Dylan, plus videotapes and other paraphernalia. There you see the book Don't Look Back, signed by Penny Baker, who created that film. Here is a very early Bob Dylan button that I got from Izzy Young that he was selling in his store in Sweden. Assorted Bob Dylan buttons. And here are a lot of Dylan posters on the ceiling of the Dylan Shrine. We quickly walked by the Dill Time display, which you saw in our last video. There is a life-size poster of Bob Dylan standing in the Dylan Shrine. In September 1995, we had the pleasure of going to Cleveland for the grand opening of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The main reason we went was to see the film on Fans, which I was in, discussing my work with Dylan. I will now show you a segment of that film, which included me and Larry Eden, known as Lamb Chop, from England.
I felt unfaithful to start listening to other music.
While these things were being shown, Dylan was singing Mr. Tambourine Man in the background. Keychains, there's the Dill Time display, Zim art, a paper dress that was popular in the 1960s.
Bob Dylan can be compared safely with Shakespeare. He's far greater than Shakespeare. He's the greatest singer, songwriter. Nobody uses phrases, terminologies, words better than Bob Dylan. Nobody summarises, paraphrases a feeling and an emotion better than Bob Dylan.
No museum will be complete without something of personal of Mr. Dylan. And this was a towel that was from the backstage area that Mr. Dylan could very well have used. On my day off, you find me in my Dylan Shrine creating something. One of the first things I created was Mr. Tambourine Man, with one arm waving free. So there you have my 15-minute video of my Dylan Shrine and the part I played at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I hope you enjoyed it.